to Shameen Jones. They want a little lateral play here for Bo Melton. They'll keep it hot for Vedrill. Once more, hey, big fella. Raekwon O'Neal, take this. Oh, my goodness. Watch out. Still no whistles. Shameen Jones cuts it back inside. He's just tripped up. Ball still live. Vedrill still keeps it going. Watch out! There are no whistles. There are no flags. This Bo Melton on the business end of the most amazing play you may ever see.
Go Tigers!
What's up, everybody? Welcome back once again to Upset Alert. It is episode number 84 of the Ultimate College Football Podcast, celebrating all 130 teams in FBS. We are here today coming at you on a Monday afternoon, about 1:30 on a Monday, November the 2nd. And first and foremost, I need to say, though that call that we opened the show with there was absolutely incredible, it did wind up getting called back. Probably, I guess, a 7 or 8 lateral play by Rutgers that was called back due to I believe one of the folks was down before they lateraled it, or maybe there was a forward pass in there somewhere, one or the other. Of course, they wound up losing that game, but we'll get into the results in just a little bit here. First and foremost, like I said, welcome to Upset Alert. It is episode number 84. We have officially everybody on board starting this weekend in college football, this coming weekend, that is. The Pac-12 is coming back this weekend. Maction is coming back this weekend. Everyone will finally be on board outside of the 3 teams that did ultimately stick with their decision to opt out of college football. So we've got 127 of the 130 all eligible now to compete starting this coming weekend. We've got lots and lots of big games coming up in the coming week, including 2 top 10 matchups. We've got really a bunch of great ranked matchups that are going to separate the men from the boys, I think, as you probably hear a motorcycle speed by my apartment in the background there. Lots of loud engine revving. But there's a lot to talk about from this past weekend. I think we're going to talk about a new college football playoff contender emerging, or perhaps one who was there on the fringe already, being made a little more legitimate now, coming into this coming weekend. We're going to talk about some COVID-19 stuff, as always. We're going to talk about some suspensions. They had a huge fight in the Missouri-Florida game. If you didn't see the highlights from that on Saturday, it's the likes of which you don't normally see on a regular college football Saturday, the kind of thing that happens maybe once or twice a season. So pretty wild stuff going on down there in the swamp. Just a lot going on in the world of college football. And like I said, we've got a lot to get to, so we will jump right into it, as this past weekend was one of the busiest weekends of college football we have had to this point, and next weekend will be even busier. So let's get right into it here, starting Thursday night. I went 2 for 2 on my Thursday night predictions from last week. It ultimately did not last, of course. Nobody's perfect. Friday, it didn't take long for my picks to go straight in the trash after that. But Thursday night, I was 2 for 2, so shout out to Gabe Thomas, our resident Georgia Southern alum and Sunbelt expert. He's been on the podcast several times in the past. Gave me a little insider info, maybe not really insider info, but just a little interesting stat on Georgia Southern, that they had not lost to South Alabama since joining the Sunbelt Conference, and they had outscored them rather by a pretty significant margin over that period. Georgia Southern did pick up the win over South Alabama. That was 24-17. Fresno State did win over Colorado State 38-17 on Thursday night as well. Good win for the Dogs there. Moving into Friday night, we had our first upset of the weekend. Minnesota ultimately losing to Maryland. You're actually seeing highlights live here on twitch.tv/robotbraineater. For those of you joining us on video, you'll see it on YouTube later today as well, as soon as that gets uploaded. But yeah, this was an exciting game. High scoring, 45-44. The Terrapins pull out the win there. Really interesting, just a complete 180 from the week before, right, when they got blown out so badly by Maryland. It's so early in the Big Ten season, it's hard to say who Maryland really is after giving up 40-plus points and not scoring any, essentially, a week ago, to putting 45 on the board. Still giving up a lot of points, but putting 45 on the board this week. You look at a Minnesota team who now finds himself at 0-2. We thought this might be a top 25 team. Definitely doesn't appear to be the case right now, having lost in back-to-back weeks. So things could get really interesting for Minnesota here, as well as for Maryland coming down the stretch, just trying to figure out who those teams are exactly in the Big Ten outside of the usual suspects like Ohio State that we feel pretty confident on. Moving forward, we had Tulsa beat East Carolina 34-30. We had Wyoming really giving it to Hawaii in a way I did not expect them to. You got to give credit where credit's due. Wyoming, one of our biggest movers, I would say, in our updated rankings over on our Twitter account at Upset Alert Pod. If you want to follow us on there, we do have our full 127 team rankings up there. Wyoming was one of our biggest movers this week because they're now 2-0. 1-1 now. They had the field goal loss to Nevada last week and a 31-7 win over Hawaii. Pretty impressive this week, I have to say. We did have originally scheduled number 19 Marshall at Florida International. That game wound up getting postponed, so did not play. And then we have our Saturday slate, and there's a lot to get to here. So we'll try not to get caught too much in the weeds on some of these, but obviously we'll stop along the way, especially for some of these top-ranked teams that did have some struggles. There were definitely some ranked versus unranked upsets. There were some ranked versus unranked ugly wins this week, so a lot to get into here. Number 1, Clemson, first and foremost, played Boston College this past weekend. Clemson sneaks out of there with a win, 34-28. Boston College led most of the game, and this is one where I really, my picks have not been perfect. They've been very far from it, but I have to claim I told you so rights on this one. I told you guys coming into this game last week that the expectation for Clemson in this game should be for them to play the way they did when Trevor Lawrence was hurt against Syracuse. I believe that was 2 years ago, and Clemson nearly lost that game. Clemson just found a way to squeak it out right at the end. I did still pick Clemson in this game. I didn't think Boston College was going to win it. I did think, though, that Boston College would give Clemson a good Halloween scare on Saturday, which is exactly what they did. Just a 6-point win for the first-ranked Clemson Tigers. You see that really and truly the reasoning that I had behind that was Trevor Lawrence is far more important to this team as a singular player than people realize he might be, even though he is the Heisman favorite. It seems kind of ridiculous to overstate his importance to the team when he is the Heisman favorite, but really, it was more so the defense that struggled against Boston College. DJ, and I'm going to butcher his name, Oyingale, I think is the correct pronunciation for Clemson as a true freshman starter, the backup to Trevor Lawrence in this football game, really came in and played a pretty good game. Threw for about 300 yards in that game, I believe. So not a bad performance by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, 342 passing yards, 30 for 41, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. You can't fault the backup QB here for Clemson's struggles. Really, you look at the team stats, and Boston College was just able to move the ball when they needed to. Not really sexy numbers, 275 overall yards for Boston College in the game compared to Clemson's 448, but pass for over 200 in the game. And really, when push came to shove, they just got it done when they needed to. Clemson did lose the one fumble that ultimately did hurt them in the game, but Boston College just played tough. Didn't put up sexy numbers, but did play tough in the game. You got to give respect to the Eagles. They have looked fairly decent this season for most of the year, and maybe their most complete performance against Clemson, at least as far as against a really quality opponent this past weekend. So good on Boston College. Clemson, though, does survive. They come out with the win. Looking forward to next week, obviously, and we will get much, much deeper into the weeds on this analysis on Thursday's predictions episode. But Trevor Lawrence is going to be out for their next game, which is against Notre Dame. That is not going to be an easy game for Clemson. We will see how things go on that. I think that's going to be one of those games where I'm going to flip-flop on it all weekend long. I think that of both of the top 10 matchups that are going to be coming this coming weekend in college football, both just seem like games I'm going to go back and forth on all week long. So we will see where we land on Clemson Notre Dame come Thursday when I start picking games. We had number 5 Georgia at unranked Kentucky. Georgia wins this one 14-3. Another lackluster performance for this Georgia offense. And there are a few takeaways here. And again, we'll get into the Georgia versus Florida analysis more so on Thursday's episode. But looking at this game specifically, at Georgia and Kentucky, kind of isolated, look at Stetson Bennett's numbers in the game at quarterback. He was 9 for 13, 131 yards. You say, oh, well, that doesn't sound so bad. That's 10.1 yards per completion there, essentially, or excuse me, yes, yes, per attempt there, rather, that you're looking at, which is not bad numbers, but he throws no touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Zamir White, really the offensive highlight for Georgia, has a career day, 26 carries, 136 yards, and a touchdown. The Georgia running game looked much better in this football game. They ran for 43 total attempts, 215 yards, and a couple of touchdowns. The other one on the ground came from Stetson Bennett, actually, on a quarterback keeper. Really, though, it's fascinating. I mean, you look at all the weapons that this Georgia offense seems to have, and I know George Pickens, one of the star receivers for Georgia, of course, was out on Saturday. But you really just look at the talent that Georgia has at the skill positions and the talent that they should have on the offensive line as well. And you think that it should be a team that should be successful, right? This is a team that really just should be doing better on offense than they are. This is a solid Kentucky defense, I guess, is the best thing you can say there in defense of the Georgia offense. The Georgia defense continues to be lights out. They hold Kentucky to just 3 points. But you have to call it like it is as well. Just briefly looking forward to next week, 14 points isn't going to do it against Florida. You have to think. I mean, Georgia's defense is great. They are not going to let Florida score 50 points the way that Florida has been doing to a bunch of teams this year. But 14 points simply isn't going to be enough, especially with 2 picks mixed in there as well. That is a recipe for a loss next week. But, of course, there is a lot more to that game than that we'll get into on Thursday. Number 7, Cincinnati hosting Memphis in this football game, a big American Athletic Conference Championship implication game here. And Cincinnati, coming into this game undefeated, not only stays undefeated, they made a statement in this game. They win it 49-10 over a really good Memphis team that I had ranked in the top 25 coming into this week. So shouts to Cincinnati I mean, this was a big win. This was a big statement win. Cincinnati has firmly established themselves as the most likely group of 5 team to get into that playoff conversation. However, we'll get to someone later that may be able to shut them out of that conversation entirely. We will move along from there, but for now, great win for Cincinnati. Memphis, for all intents and purposes, is just about shut out of that AAC championship conversation. They are getting close to that point anyway. Following that, we had number 13 Michigan hosting Michigan State, and after Michigan State had just lost to Rutgers last week, I don't think anybody was giving them too much of a chance in this game, but give credit to head coach Mel Tucker at Michigan State coming into the big house and getting the upset win. How about that? Michigan State wins it 27-24. Michigan, who just a week ago we were talking about like they might challenge Ohio State, now all of a sudden it is same old Michigan is the conversation that we are having right now. So moving right along, number 16, Kansas State, another upset. So Kansas State on the road at West Virginia. West Virginia wins this one, not just by a field goal like Michigan State upset Michigan, but rather by 27 points. It's 37-10 for the Mountaineers. Country roads, take me home. West Virginia with a big statement win on Saturday to prove that they are definitely better than I thought they were. If you guys recall, on Thursday's episode, I ran through my picks and said I have no earthly idea why West Virginia is favored in this game. Take Kansas State with the points. I sound like an idiot, don't I? I mean, we all have it sometimes where we just get a game really wrong, and I got that one really wrong. I got another one later on, an SEC game really wrong that we'll get into later, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, we've got another ranked team in action. Number 20, Coastal Carolina, was on the road against Georgia State. They were just about a field goal favorite in this game, I think. Coastal Carolina wins 51-0. That is a statement win. I know Georgia State is not a particularly great team, but that is a statement win for Coastal Carolina. The Chanticleers continue to impress as this season has gone along, and they continue to remain the team to beat in the Sun Belt Conference right now. Iowa State, that's number 23, Iowa State at Kansas. Iowa State does about what you expect. Nothing too shocking in this one. It's a 52-22 win. Kansas did put up some points in that game, but they continue to be bad at football. Iowa State continues to bounce back despite a couple of losses on the record already. We had FAU, Florida Atlantic, picking up a nice quality win, 24-3 over UTSA. This is a decent UTSA team, rather, thus far this season. So Florida Atlantic, this is actually a better win than a lot of people might realize it is. Good on FAU. They look like a pretty decent team in the Conference USA conference right now. We've got Tulane and Temple. This one went pretty sideways. Tulane, I did pick in this game, but Tulane just overall looked like the better team all day. 38-3 over Temple. Not much to say about that one other than congrats to Tulane. Purdue picked up their second win already this season. I did not have Purdue starting 2-0, let me tell you that. They won this one 31-24 on the road against Illinois. The Fighting Illini look like one of the weaker teams in the Big Ten thus far this season, but Purdue establishing themselves as a player in the Big Ten. Maybe not necessarily somebody that's going to legitimately compete for a conference championship or anything like that, but this is a team that could play spoiler to someone based on what we're seeing thus far. So good on the Boilermakers. They pick up a nice win on Saturday. We had Wake Forest on the road at Syracuse. Wake Forest picks up a 38-14 win in this one. So shouts to the Demon Deacons. They have a few decent wins thus far this season. They moved to 4-2 actually with this win. Syracuse falls to just 1-6. They are down in that spot on our overall rankings now, where they are below 100. So Syracuse, the Orange, not looking so hot. We have UCF at Houston. UCF, who did lose a couple of games early on in the season, is bouncing back a little bit now. Their offense, one of the most productive in the country. They dropped 44 points on the road against Houston and win that one 44-21. Good on UCF. They still want to have a say, at least in this AAC championship picture. I don't know if they will wind up in that spot at this point, just with the games that they've already lost. But, good on UCF. They still have a chance to bounce back into that conversation, at least. We had one of the uglier games of the week, I think, in terms of who it was matching up. Rice at Southern Miss. Southern Miss has been really bad all season long. They're on their third head coach of the season now, with the interim head coach having left to go take the Austin Peay head coaching job. Really just crazy stuff. What's going on at Southern Miss right now? I think this team I just think this team is too good to be playing this badly right now. They've been through a lot at this point with the head coaching changes, with some serious upset losses that they have taken. They hosted Rice in this game and lost 30-6. I mean, Rice is not a good football team. Definitely not somebody that I expected to beat Southern Miss coming into the preseason or even coming into this week. I just did not expect this Rice team to be able to manhandle Southern Miss in the way that they did on Saturday. We've got to look, at some changes, obviously, that need to be made at Southern Miss going forward. The coaching position is a hot mess right now. And even outside of that, I mean, what do you have to lose mixing things up? I know they're trying different quarterbacks right now, and nothing's really working that well for them. Southern Miss was a team I legitimately picked to go 10-2 in the preseason, and now we are sitting here at 1-5 after a loss at home to Rice by 24. Just things not going well for the Southern Miss Golden Eagles there. We've got Troy at Arkansas State. This one did not go the way I expected it to. I thought it might be a close game, but I've been fairly high on this Arkansas State team. I think the time has come for me to abandon ship in thinking Arkansas State is even one of the top teams, maybe even the top 5 or 6 teams they might not be at this point in the Sun Belt Conference. I think Troy really looked pretty good on Saturday. Troy moves to 4-2, and they are kind of emerging as an upper middle tier team in the Sun Belt as they win 38-10 against Arkansas State, a team that I picked to make the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. So good on the Troy Trojans there. I am abandoning ship on Arkansas State officially. We had number 4, Notre Dame at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has not been very good this year, so we were all expecting Notre Dame to win this game, but it was 31-13, fairly uninteresting score, I think. No huge takeaways directly on that. But what we will get to, and we'll get to another result here in just a moment that really opens this door. But Notre Dame, I think at this point in the season, has emerged as a legitimate playoff contender. This is the team that I am referencing in the title of the episode when I say a playoff contender emerges. It's the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and let me tell you the reason why. I'll go on a few minute tangent here. Notre Dame, first and foremost, not all the wins have been sexy this year, but they are undefeated. That matters. They are playing a true conference schedule and not just a handful of mediocre teams mixed with like 2 good teams. That also matters. Next week, they play their toughest game of the regular season schedule, the only game that I picked them to lose on the regular season schedule. That is against Clemson, who will be without Heisman favorite quarterback Trevor Lawrence. That really matters. This is a Notre Dame team who could potentially, with a Clemson team with no Trevor Lawrence, they could spring an upset next week. If not, they could at least keep it close enough to stay in that conversation. But imagine this scenario for a moment, if you will. Notre Dame wins against Clemson next week. I know some of you do not think that's going to happen. I know some of you not only don't think that's going to happen, you don't think it's reasonable to think that. But I think it's a reasonable thing to imagine. It is a reasonable possibility that Notre Dame beats Clemson next week. Not saying it's going to happen, but it is certainly a possibility to consider. If Notre Dame beats Clemson next week, sans Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, then this Notre Dame team will in all likelihood roll into the ACC Conference Championship game undefeated, where they would likely lose to Clemson. If you had a Notre Dame team who had only lost one game, and that was the conference championship against Clemson, how can you leave that team out of the college football playoff conversation? They would certainly be a consideration at that point, especially when you're talking about the likely other teams that would be in the conversation, right? At this point, you're likely talking about Alabama out of the SEC. They are certainly going to be the favorite to win the SEC going forward. You're likely talking about Ohio State coming out of the Big Ten. They are going to be the Big Ten favorite going forward until proven otherwise. They've already gotten past the toughest team on paper on their regular season schedule, which was Penn State this past week. We'll get to that later. You're talking about out of the Big 12, who knows? It would have to be someone with at least one loss. Everyone in the Big 12 has at least one loss now. And the conference overall just doesn't look particularly strong. Out of the Pac-12, you'd be talking about they haven't started yet, so there's the potential for someone to go undefeated in the Pac-12. But who's it going to be? Oregon, USC? I think those are the only two teams that even have the potential, really, to go undefeated. And even if they do, they will have played a significantly less rigorous and less, in terms of numbers of games, schedule, than Notre Dame would have at that point. So I don't know how you would pick them over Notre Dame if this situation that I just described occurred, which would be them beating Clemson, then losing to Clemson in the conference championship game. But just a hypothetical for you to consider. Keep it in the back of your mind as we prepare for one of the biggest regular season matchups of the year, Notre Dame and Clemson. We had number 17, Indiana at Rutgers. Rutgers coming off the Week 1 win, the unexpected Week 1 upset, and Indiana coming off the even more unexpected, perhaps, Week 1 upset of the Penn State Nittany Lions. Indiana wins this one 37-21. When it was at 37-21, Rutgers nearly had that incredible play that we opened the show with, the call for that play, the hook and lateral there, ultimately gets called back. That pretty much ended the day for Rutgers there, as that was a desperation moment. But shouts to the Hoosiers. They're looking pretty good so far. A 16-point win over Rutgers, a last-second win on a diving 2-point conversion play against Penn State. You have to like this Indiana team, what you're seeing so far. We had UAB at Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech really surprised me in this one. I thought UAB was far and away the team in Conference USA. Other teams that I expected to emerge in that conference have just not done it. La Tech has not done it for the most part. Western Kentucky has been really bad, and I expected them to be good. I thought UAB was just going to kind of run away with Conference USA, and that still may be the case when the season is over and done with. But Louisiana Tech picks up a big-time double overtime win over the Blazers, 37-34. So shouts to La Tech. That's a good one. We had TCU at Baylor, 33-23. I started to say number 33 TCU. That is not the case. 33-23 TCU wins over Baylor. This is about what I expected in this one, I would say. Horned Frogs picking up the win. They've probably been the better team consistently this year, though neither of these teams have really stood out, to be honest, outside of the TCU upset win over Texas, of course, was a highlight for them. Here was the aforementioned SEC game where I could not have been more wrong. I thought LSU minus, I believe it was 2.5 or 3.5 in this game, the point spread. I thought that was easy money. Auburn crushes LSU on Saturday. I don't think I realized, because I've only seen bits and pieces of most LSU games this year. I watched almost all of this game on Saturday for whatever reason. For what bit I could stay awake of, at least. I watched most of this football game on CBS on Saturday. LSU's defense is just criminally bad. Criminally bad. I don't understand. I mean, we were having a conversation on Saturday on Twitter. We saw one of our friends that lives down here in the Orlando area where we do. His name's Taylor. He's a big time LSU fan, probably the biggest LSU fan that I know. And he asked the question, do you even let Bo Pelini on the plane back home? And my response to that is, the option behind him can't be any worse, right? I mean, you could hire somebody who's like a professional Madden player, and they couldn't do any worse than what Bo Pelini is doing as the defensive coordinator at LSU right now. They are so bad on defense, undisciplined, uninspired, whatever word you want to use to describe. It is just a dumpster fire on defense for LSU right now. The offense isn't great either, by the way. Turning the ball over left and right in this game. But this defense really made Bo Nix look like Cam Newton out there, which is just criminal. Absolutely criminal. I mean, Bo Nix, who we were talking just a week or two ago about needing to be benched, he goes 18 of 24 passing, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 11 carries for 81 yards and another touchdown. Bo Nix was out there looking like Tim Tebow or Cam Newton or something against this awful LSU defense. Just what more can you say? 48-11, Auburn with a big, much-needed win in this game. We had Northwestern with their second win already this year, 21-20 over Iowa on the road. Iowa starting the season 0-2, Northwestern starting 2-0. If you had that on your picks coming into the beginning of this season, then I need to get some lottery numbers from you, because I did not see that one coming for sure. We had Texas on the road at number 6, Oklahoma State. It is time for me to claim I told you so rights once again, because I picked this upset unranked against the number 6 team in the country. I actually had Oklahoma State at the number 4 team in the country last week. This was a big win for Texas, needless to say. I think people have been lower on Texas than they should be, because they've lost 2 games. They have lost 2 games. Let's be fair here. They're still a very good football team. Sam Ehlinger's a very good quarterback. Oklahoma State, I did not know if they could keep up with Texas in a shootout. They did keep up with them for the most part. This goes to overtime, but Texas does pick up the one touchdown win and make their way back into the top 25. Good on the Longhorns. Hook 'em. Obviously, Oklahoma State, still one of the favorites in the Big 12, if not the favorite. Texas and Oklahoma both with 2 losses. OK State only has the 1. But they've still got to play Oklahoma down the road. So it is going to get interesting in the Big 12. It is simply a toss-up, I think, is the best way you can describe the Big 12 conference championship talks right now. We had Ole Miss at Vanderbilt. This is the battle of 2 of the worst teams in the SEC. Ole Miss has just been so inconsistent, but their offense, for the most part, has been good. They dropped 54 on Vandy. Vandy loses that one 54-21. We had App State at UL Monroe. App State picks up a win 31-13. UL Monroe, arguably the worst team in college football. They are way down there for sure. App State is working their way back into, not quite yet for us, but they're going to start working their way back into top 25 contention if they keep winning. But the if is pretty big. They haven't had a ton of sexy wins. They did not play particularly well early in the season, especially this 31-13 win over UL Monroe really isn't even a very sexy win. But App State is going to keep winning. If they do, then they will get their way back into that top 25 talk with just 1 loss as a pretty good Sun Belt team. Virginia Tech at Louisville. Virginia Tech picks up the win here, 42-35 on the road. Louisville appears to be clicking a little more than they were at times this season. Obviously, Malik Cunningham's been battling injuries a little bit, but Virginia Tech is a good football team. They got the win here, as I expected. Number 25, Boise State on the road at Air Force wins 49-30. Boise State was, and will continue to be the favorite in the Mountain West Conference for a reason. This is a decent Air Force team that they beat on Saturday. Boise State is a legitimate threat in the Mountain West to be kind of a breakout group of 5 team in the way that we have seen Coastal Carolina emerge, in the way that we have seen Cincinnati emerge this year. Number 2, Alabama hosting Mississippi State just shuts them right out, 41-0. Outside of maybe Vanderbilt, who looks worse in the SEC than Mississippi State? And honestly, I think Mississippi State looks worse than Vanderbilt since that Week 1 performance against LSU, of course, where they won. Mississippi State has been really, really, really bad on offense. They are turning the ball over a lot. They are not moving the ball well. Let's just take a look at some of these stat lines here. They throw a ton of passes still as a team because they did swap quarterbacks at some point in this game. 28 for 48 overall passing as a team, 163 yards. That's just 3.4 yards per attempt. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions in that game. As a team, they ran for just 37 yards on the ground. Absolutely criminally bad on offense. KJ Costello, who literally in his first game as an SEC quarterback set the single game SEC passing record. This game he was 4 for 11, 16 yards. That is pretty bad. You're going to have a hard time winning against Alabama. You're going to have a hard time winning against Vanderbilt with those kind of numbers. So let's move right along as Alabama continues to look incredible. New Mexico at San Jose State. San Jose State gets another win, 38-21. Good on the Spartans. Charlotte at Duke. Duke wins 53-19, a blowout win for Duke. Good for Duke. Number 3, Ohio State on the road at number 18, Penn State. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Ohio State, of course, is the favorite in the Big Ten. Penn State was viewed to be the toughest game on their regular season schedule outside of maybe Michigan. Ohio State wins this one by a couple scores, 38-25. It was right about, I think the spread was at 12.5 points, so that is about as close as you can get to it right there. Good on Ohio State. They continue to look great. Penn State, not so much. 0-2 starting the year. You can't fault them for losing this one, but that loss last week looms even larger now for the Nittany Lions. Number 8, Texas A&M beat Arkansas 42-31. We thought this one might be a little close. It was. Arkansas putting up 31 here. Texas A&M's defense might be questionable at times, but they are really turning the corner. They are number 8 in the country right now. That feels a little high for me, but this is a good Texas A&M team for sure. We had number 10, Florida beat Missouri 41-17. There was a huge brawl in this game right before halftime. Dan Mullen kind of waving his arms, viewed to be inciting the crowd a little bit, trying to feed into that energy. They did just come out with some news about the brawl, some suspensions coming earlier today, just about an hour ago, I guess this news came out. Essentially all the same players no additional suspensions, but players that were ejected in at the end of the first half there will be suspended for the first half of their next game. Real winner of this brawl is Georgia, because Florida and Missouri, because Missouri has a bye week this week, both of those teams' next games is against the Georgia Bulldogs. So Missouri has a player or two suspended for the first half against Georgia in 2 weeks. Florida has a couple players suspended for the first half next week, or this week, I suppose I should say. And Dan Mullen gets a little bit of a fine in there as well. No real news, but if you haven't seen the video, it was a pretty intense brawl that they had out there on the field right before halftime. We'll try to get through these last few really quick here so we can wrap things up. Navy at number 22, SMU. SMU wins 51-37, about what you expected in this one. Navy puts up a decent point total, but SMU will win most shootouts as they did on Saturday. Virginia, with a top 15 upset, they won 44-41 over number 15, North Carolina. North Carolina has more questions than answers at this point after some big blowout wins, some big offensive performances, but losses against Florida State and Virginia, who have not looked particularly great for the most part this season in other competition. So shouts to the Virginia Cavaliers. This was just their second win of the year. They moved to 2-4. UNC falls to 4-2. I have a hard time ranking UNC with losses to Virginia and Florida State on the resume, despite how good the offenses looked at times. Number 24, Oklahoma at Texas Tech. They win 62-28. Louisiana at Texas State, not too sexy of a win, but they do get 44-34 over the Bobcats. San Diego State 38-7 over Utah State. 11-ranked BYU wins 41-10 over a bad Western Kentucky team. Nevada continues their winning ways after beating Wyoming last week. They win 37-19 on the road against UNLV, a pretty bad football team in their own right. North Texas at UTEP and number 9 Wisconsin at Nebraska were both postponed. In Nebraska's case, I suppose canceled is the appropriate word, since the Big Ten doesn't have an off week built in to kind of make up those postponed games. And that is going to wrap us up for our kind of Week 9 wrap-up here on Upset Alert, episode number 84. We are really getting into the nitty-gritty of the college football season. Pac-12 joins us this coming week. The MAC joins us this coming week. And, of course, we've still got big matchups in the ACC and the SEC. Top 10 matchups in the coming week. Georgia-Florida week. Clemson-Notre Dame week. We've got some other big ranked matchups. So really just lots to look forward to in the coming week of college football. In the meantime, please do follow us on Twitter at Upset Alert Pod. We will be posting our updated rankings there every week, normally Sunday or Monday. Try to get them out Sunday if we can that day, depending on how much spare time I have, quite frankly, between living real life, working my day job, which I am going back to shortly here. So yeah, I'll be posting updated rankings normally every Sunday on there. We'll be posting in-game scores, score updates, college football news, all that kind of stuff throughout the day on Saturdays, Thursdays. We're getting games on Wednesdays now more. So really every day of the week is a college football news day now at this point. So we'll continue posting all that news on there at Upset Alert Pod on Twitter. As always, you can join us live here on video at twitch.tv/robotbraineater. So if you do want to get those notifications when we go live to stream on video, follow us at twitch.tv/robotbraineater. And one last thing to plug, of course, we're on all the podcast services: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google, etc. Find us on there, Upset Alert. And thank you guys so much for listening every day, or every week, I should say, twice a week. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until Thursday, when we can talk more college football, we will see you later.